The acts of sabotage which took place in Poland over the weekend, along with the acts of hybrid warfare across Europe, paint a clear picture. European security is being breached on a regular basis, and the security landscape is becoming increasingly challenging. Discussing the latest developments in Poland, joining me here in the studio is Paulina Piasecka, director of the Terrorism Research Center at the Civitas University. Thank you so much for joining me here in the studio.
Thank you for having me.
As we're looking at the situation which took place and the big investigation that is ongoing here in Poland, from your professional perspective, do you think that the acts of sabotage we observe in Poland mark a point of no return? I mean, how do you assess what happened?
Well, I do think that it's a part of the ongoing hybrid warfare campaign in Poland. It's neither beginning nor the end, unfortunately, probably. But we do need to realize that we've been a target of hybrid attacks for quite a few years in the information environment, in cyberspace, especially when it comes to the cyber attacks against elements of the critical infrastructure. So it is an escalation in the kinetic sense of the kinetic attacks, but again, it's not the beginning, it's not the end, it's on a spectrum of hybrid warfare.
So where do you think on the spectrum are we? When we're looking at how far Russia and other adversaries that could potentially think of sparking some sort of an unrest, be it politically or socially, is?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, we do have a blueprint for that. This blueprint is used to analyze something that was called once the Gerasimov's doctrine, so the doctrine of Russian war, hybrid war, not only warfare, but the very complex approach to the modern conflict. And it is divided into quite a few phases. And the appearance of the kinetic attacks in the form of the special ops or the sabotage or diversion marks somewhere between 5th and 6th out of 8 phases. So we are quite far along when it comes to being the target of such operations.
So when we look at the political space, we hear different voices. We also hear from experts. Do you think that it's fair to call this situation, which is currently taking place in Poland, an act of sabotage, or is it already a hybrid war?
Well, an act of sabotage is an element of hybrid war. If we looked at the 2014 military doctrine of the Russian Federation, and there is such a document, it lists the characteristics of the modern conflict. And those operations, including not only the kinetic attacks against critical infrastructure, but also the use of the groups of political protest, of the externally financed internal political and social forces. They're all within the toolbox of hybrid warfare. So it's both sabotage and the element of hybrid warfare. It's an inherent part of this wider concept.
As we look at what happened, the investigation that is ongoing, we already know that one act of sabotage has been officially confirmed. We are looking at a second investigation. We've heard about different acts taking place in Slovenia as well. What else, what more could the Polish government do at this point in time in order to counter the threat that is being posed to the country?
Well, I think one of the first and most important issues here is the clear communication and transparent communication with the society. No matter how brave and how professional our intelligence services are and how brave, courageous and outgoing towards the public are the officers and the functionaries and the members of the law enforcement, there's still much more Poles than there is members of those uniformed services. So if we all at least try to serve as the eye, as the early warning system,
see it, say it, sorted.
Yes, exactly that. There are people in this country who are being paid to know, who are being paid to analyze, but they need information. And we just might be the source of information that will allow for the prevention of a very serious attack.
Why do you think this particular railway track was being targeted?
Well, it's something that the Prime Minister of the Republic of Poland said. It is a railway that leads towards Ukraine and that is being used to transport the military aid to Ukraine. So it only makes sense that out of all of the elements of the public railway infrastructure, this one was targeted. This provides the most direct benefits to the attacker.
And do you think that the civilians have a reason to be concerned with their safety? I mean, we talk a lot about the military purposes. We're talking about these acts of sabotage as if they don't really concern us, but this could have had could carry real risks and have potential terrible consequences for a lot of people.
That's true. And if there is this sort of misawareness that it does not concern the public, that does not concern the normal citizen, then those who think that would be sorely mistaken. The hybrid warfare is the war that is called war amongst people. It's the war that targets more often than not elements of the civilian critical infrastructure. We've been witnessing, for example, the cyber attacks against the water pipelines. We've been witnessing the attempts to set fire to elements of very civilian marketplaces. This all happens amongst people because the primary front line of hybrid warfare goes through our minds, through our brains. It's about scaring us, it's about destabilizing us, it's about polarizing the society and creating a situation in which we become our biggest enemy.
But that's about a fear. What if this sort of an incursion, this act of sabotage could have had tangible, terrible consequences? What happens then when it comes to the hybrid warfare, when it comes to diplomatic relations?
Well, I think this is a very complicated question because it touches upon something that once we called, for example, political thresholds for cyber warfare. How do you prove that there is a concrete individual attacker behind that? Mm-hmm. What do you do in saying, okay, we all know that this being, this entity that would benefit most from attacking us would probably be Russian Federation because we are messing with their attacking Ukraine, but we don't have proof.
But if we do, if we find a person, if we catch them in the act,
we find a person, but how do we prove that they are working for the Russian government? And if
more connections, more connections, and more. We live in the world of cyber technology.
But it's not only about the connections; it's also about the political will. Because at some point we will come to this red line, and there will be a decision to make. And this decision, it will not only be a decision to make for the Polish government and Polish political forces, it will also be a decision for NATO. Because the Polish decision that we have been attacked and that we are in fact at war is the decision that will influence the whole NATO, which is why it is so extremely important for us to create the strongest possible, almost foolproof barrier between us and the acts of hybrid warfare, because it's not only an attack against us. It might be also an attack against the integrity of the European Union and the provocation towards NATO, which only raises the level of our responsibility.
Winning
also,
by division.
Us individual citizens, exactly.
So what do you think will be the next target of such acts of sabotage as we've seen so far? I mean, there is definitely an escalation, and not only here on the Eastern European and NATO flank, but we're also looking at escalation all over the continent. Mm-hmm. What do you think could possibly happen next?
Well, if we're looking at, for example, this thing that is easiest and theoretically has the most asymmetric return on investment, so the lowest possible investment in attack and the highest possible return from this attack, that would be probably an attack in cyberspace against an important element of the critical infrastructure, attacking an important electric grid, attacking a crossroads between important transfers of energy flows in the region, causing blackouts. The blackouts, electric blackouts, it's not only about the fact that we don't have the access to Instagram and can't look at cats on Instagram. It's also about the hospitals. It's also about
critical infrastructure.
Yes, and it's also about the lives of people who are dependent, for example, on life support. It's also about the communication. It's about so many things that are dependent on computers, which are dependent on electric energy to function. So that is what I would look at, the diversion by creating kinetic attacks, but also very, very subtle and quite often very directed attacks against the critical infrastructure in cyberspace.
One thing very quickly, because our time here on the program is coming to an end, what us as regular people can do to counter these attacks in the best way possible?
I think you've already said that. Be aware, inform if you learn about something. Don't worry about misinforming the services. They are here exactly to do that, to divide the truth from the false. And also, and I think it's quite important, think critically. Think before responding to a provocation, information provocation. Think before repeating any truths that you learn on the internet. And always, always look at the source.
Always check your sources. Thank you very much, Paulina Piasecka, Director of the Terrorism Research Center at the Civitas University. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And so this would be all for now here on World News Tonight. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you back here on TVP World in just a moment for more news and features. Good night.